I want to close the loop on my last video, which if you didn't watch it, I had been planner hopping all year through 2024 and just sort of lost myself and didn't know where I was with planning, what I had been doing. And so I took out all my books for the last 4 years and went through them and kind of tried to puzzle piece together what I had done this year. And it was maybe came off as a little stressful at the time, but it was actually a really fun process. And it was really interesting for me to go back through my recent planners and journals and figure out what works for me, what doesn't. And when I say works for me, I more mean like what flows, what sparks joy, what I enjoy looking back on, what I enjoy in the moment, all of that. So I actually am in a place right now where I'm feeling very like planner piece-esque. So I want to share how I went from like planner hopping all year to something that I'm feeling very comfortable in. I made a bunch of notes on what that thought process was like and sort of where my brain went in reviewing those notebooks and sort of what works for me and what I want to do going forward. So let's start with my kind of review. One of my biggest takeaways from this whole process is that I have this black hole of memory keeping, journaling, brain dumping, planning that is actually pretty difficult for me to tease out. So sometimes they've been totally separate. I'm planning and I'm journaling. Sometimes it's all in one book, but there's separate sections where my journaling is in the back, my planning is in different spreads in the front. And then sometimes I've been bullet journaling where it's pretty much all together and it's just a mess of, journaling, planning, brain dumping. And so that sort of gave me a framework to think within that I hadn't really thought of before. So I like to do this because I like processing my thoughts on paper. I think that's why I'm journaling, planning on paper in the first place. And it tends to be very stream of conscious because I'm processing. I haven't figured it out yet. If I'm ever doing anything like memory keeping where I want it to be a really focused summary of what I've been doing for the day, what happened, or something like prompt journaling where I'm focusing on one particular topic, that's a very different activity for me. Not that I don't enjoy it sometimes, it just feels a little bit more like work. I actually have to put work and energy into some sort of focused spread and to me, what happens naturally day to day is just letting everything come out. So they're kind of two different activities, and it's more the process that is different as opposed to the content. So memory keeping, journaling, and planning, they can all come out in that processing, brain dumping, stream of conscious way. And then they can also be more structured, so I can then go back and review or figure out what the big picture goals are. So I'm thinking about things a little bit differently and trying to figure out what approach I can use for what purpose, if that makes sense. So anyway, with that realization, that really clarified that I need a place to just process and brain dump, that it can't be rigid and it can't be a daily or a weekly commitment. I want so badly, and I tried so hard this year to make 1 page per day work. I think I still dream about being an A6 Hobonichi girl where I have 1 page for each day, or even cousin. I have a cousin that I'm always drawn back to. I've tried it in, I tried it in a week's size as well earlier this year, where I was trying to do 1 page a day journaling in a week insert, and then I could couple it with planning here. And I realized that I can't commit to 1 page per day. As much as I would love for that to be the case, I either am gonna skip the day or I'm gonna need 5 times as much space. So I need flexibility and I need to not have to do it. I generally pick up my paper planners and journals daily or at least weekly, but I don't want to commit to it. I learned that from memory keeping when I went through first trying to memory keep daily and then saying, okay, I'm gonna do it weekly, and then landing on, okay, I'll do it monthly. And this is sort of where I've landed. So I've learned that days, weeks need to be flexible with no commitments, and then I can regroup on a monthly level. And I can commit to doing that. So what's funny is it just feels like the obvious answer is that the daily log, that's sort of the traditional bullet journal daily log method, where it is very much just about getting your thoughts out. You can process them later, figure them out later, but just letting things out. So that's become a theme for me. When I looked at what worked, I kept coming back to this 2021 binder of standard inserts that I used 1 per season, and they're so messy, and I actually really like that about them. It just feels like it was so comfortable. I was just sort of like letting everything out, didn't care really what it looked like, didn't have much of a special system or anything, was trying different things all the time, but having it all together just sort of let out whenever I needed it. I did have a journaling section, so for more long form, and this is still super messy, but I just had spaces to let things out. So, just to review from here, kind of like what those no's and yeses takes away are on this side is, no 1 page per day, no vertical weeklies, and really no committed weeklies. Vertical weeklies, just for sure, I tried, just as much as I tried to make 1 page per day work, I tried to make vertical weeks work. And I've accepted that, and that's been very helpful for me to accept that those 2 things are just not my jam right now. No contained spaces and no committed spaces. And then with that, on the size side, I really love Passport and A6. I tried so hard to make A6 work recently. I have a really lovely A6 cover from Mansoura Atelier. I know that I'm pronouncing that wrong. And I love this so much. I needed to make A6 work for it. I ended up actually using some pocket books in here, which I'll go through. I'll have to go through this at another time because this is total tangent, like specialty sort of side journal. But I had to let go Passport, A6, the size is too small, too contained. Nothing that is like as rigid as you have to do this on a daily basis, and even on a weekly basis. I'm realizing some weeks I need something different than others. So, I did note that I like B6, but it's not singing to me right now. The A6 and B6, I really like both of these sizes, and I've gone back to them a couple times. I really like the B6 Common Planner. I also have a beautiful B6 cover. That's probably another reason why I'm going back to it. And I really do enjoy it, but there's something about these sizes that feel kind of boring to me in a way. I don't know what it is. So they're just not bringing me joy right now. So in this whole, I'm gonna just brain dump and get my thoughts out all in one place, the tall and skinny sizes started to stand out to me a little bit more. Originally, I thought the weeks was really a size that was gonna work for me, and I was putting together, multiple different attempts at creating like more of a journal or even bullet journal approach using this week size. And I think what's appealing to me about these sort of taller and narrower is that if I'm just doing rapid logging, I don't need that wide page. I really more need the length. I ended up settling on standard TN. I think the extra space is nice. It feels a little more airy and breathable than weeks, which is just a little bit smaller. But anyway, so that approach kind of helped me explain to myself why I've been drawn towards the weeks and standard sizes. And then I already talked about layout. Really, a lot of it is just flexibility, light weeks, flexible days, but also the ability to kind of have heavier days. So no contained spaces, and consolidating on the monthly level. So I do like having something a little bit more like a dashboard on the monthly level that I can check in on that is a little bit more rigid. Okay, so that's sort of this side, and this side is basically days and weeks. So I will give a little spoiler alert. What I ended up doing is going with a bullet journal insert, or with a bullet journal approach, and I'm creating weeks when I want to, and putting together rapid logs and maybe some small journaling in here. And so that's sort of where I'm going with those days and weeks. I can set up the weeks how I want, I can set up the days how I want. It's, like I said, that classic kind of bullet journal approach. But I've mentioned this already as well, but I've been thinking about memory keeping and have been a lot more interested in memory keeping, specifically since I had kids, but also just as I get older. I think it's more appealing and interesting to me to have a way of kind of flipping back through my archives and getting a sense of where I was at in my life at the time. So what I'm doing is kind of taking these daily, weekly processing notes and then converting them on a monthly level. So for memory keeping, like I mentioned, kind of going back, I can use you can see I have a lot of backfilling to do on this, but I can use my daily and weekly notes to fill this in pretty easily. And then I'm putting pictures up here that I can easily get from my phone. And then on like a planning personal level, I have this sort of dashboard style monthly, and I just kind of was putting together words like dashboard, summary, checkpoint. It's kind of an index of sorts and like my highlights. So apart from memory keeping, I'm also doing that in my bullet journal, where I'm tracking my mood, putting together just like highlights, when we were sick, vacations, stuff like that. I am expecting this to evolve and get a little bit more detailed, because this is sort of my checkpoint and summary. So I'm taking kind of all that chaos and using the month as a way to sort and to kind of anchor to something. And then a little bit more on the planning side. I plan on paper, but I also use Google Calendar, I use Notion, I use Outlook for work, and I have this whole planning system that I would love to get into in a future video, but it has lived in all these, books that only exist for a period of time, and then it's gone, and I'm rewriting out my goals or recategorizing what my routines are, whatever it is. So I need a big picture planning system. I kind of have one, but I think defining it and understanding how it all works together is really helpful for me. And again, something I can go into in a future video. But what that's led to is a plotter, which I've always said rings won't work for me, but I think plotter is like a special version of rings. I had to figure out a way to make a plotter fit into my life, and it's perfect. So again, I'll need to expand on this somewhere else, but this is essentially my reference planning system. Mostly personal. I do have some work stuff in here, but again, most of my work stuff is in digital tools. Most of my like calendar stuff is in digital tools, just from convenience. This is more along the lines of like task planning, goal planning. So I can have those thoughts go into this system and then get sorted into this system that is not time-based. Or I can pull, goals, tasks, stuff like that from here and put it into my weekly planning if I am doing weekly and daily planning at that time. So this kind of gives me a long-term reference point. And so this can continue to be that sort of chaotic approach. And then the one other thing I will note and point out is that I have other inserts in here besides the sort of key seasonal book. And I that was one of my big takeaways, is that I cannot stick to a book for more than a couple months, and I never have, and I don't say never, but I won't. I need to stop thinking about buying my weeks for the next year or buying my yearly common planner, because I'm not going to stick to it for a year. So leaning into this seasonal planning approach, it's also just sort of vibey and fun to have like an autumn book. So autumn to me, it's essentially quarterly planning. I've just broken out the months slightly differently. So like instead of Q1, I have December, January, February, and that's winter. So I'm sticking with the bullet journal I referenced earlier. This is my sort of main, everything goes in here. I can switch it up monthly. I can really switch up daily, whatever the format is. I can do whatever I want, but I get a fresh start monthly. I cut this down. This was an A5 Perpinep. I cut it down. I spent a long time trying to find what book to use, and I love this paper. I love the grid size. It's the right thickness, like it's the right size bulk wise. I wanted more of a book than an insert, but anyway, so I have that, but I also have these other inserts. One of them is literally just for planner thoughts, and I think it's because I tend to go on rants. Even this, and I don't need to look back on this in my bullet journal. It's actually kind of fun to look back on it in one place. And what's funny is that once I created this, I actually stopped using it as much. I'm sure this will go through phases, but having all of those things together but separate from everything else has been kind of nice. So it's some sort of organization to my brain dumping chaos. I also intended to do that with stuff that just like felt icky going into my regular bullet journal. If I'm flipping back on this through the years, there's certain like states of mind or just things that you like have to get out on paper, but you don't really want to look back on. I've called them burn books in the past. This is just like an overflow insert that is like mostly picked out. I actually like cut most of the pages out of it, and I haven't even used it yet, but the idea is that I have another container to brain dump into and not have to worry about it getting mixed in with everything else. So this is sort of just adds to that like brain dumping, go with the flow. One other thing that I kept coming back to is messy. Going through what worked for me in 2021, the mess of it all is like so endearing to me for some reason. And I still try to make things a lot neater nowadays, but just the concept that this can be messy, like here, like I felt like using pencil that day or something, and then so leaning into that messiness, flexible flow on that daily basis, and then reviewing on a weekly basis when it makes sense, and then kind of having that anchoring on the month. So I hope this was somewhat clarifying and interesting. My brain dump, my memory keeper, my reference book. I'd love to maybe go into this one a little bit more detail. I also have some side books that I can go into a little bit too. But I just wanted to kind of round out the chaos from the last video and sort of share how that ended with something pretty peaceful and more of a container for that chaos. All right, thanks for watching.